There's a certain expectation from any negative character being built up in any video game that sooner or later we as players will eventually get to face off against them. Boss fights are no longer as common in this medium as they once were, but some villains are built up so much or so well that when we don't get to fight them or fight them properly, we can't help but feel a little disappointed. In this feature, we'll be taking a look at 15 such bad guys that we would have loved to square off against, but never got the chance to. Obviously, there will be spoilers ahead. The Illusive Man, Mass Effect 3. The Illusive Man is perhaps the best villain in the entire Mass Effect series, and when you consider that the likes of Saren, Sovereign, and Harbinger are all of Mass Effect's villains as well, you know that that is not light praise. Mass Effect 3 specifically builds him up as one of your ultimate foes, so the fact that you never actually get to fight him is all the more disappointing. Indoctrinated as he was, going up against a much more powerful Illusive Man would have made for an excellent battle. And though the dialogue exchange between him, Shepard, and Anderson is intense, it is still a bit deflating that you never actually get to fight him. Harbinger, Mass Effect 3. The Reapers are the biggest of the big bads, with their purpose being to wipe out literally all sentient life in the galaxy. As the leader of these terrifying beings, there should be no one more terrifying than Harbinger, who, sure enough, is built up as such over the course of 2 games. Except, you never get to fight him. Hell, during the conclusion of Mass Effect 3, you never even see him. You hear about him and his forces approaching Earth over the radio, but your final battle, so to speak, is a binary dialogue choice in the Citadel. There are many reasons Mass Effect 3's ending is considered disappointing, and this is surely one of them. Skullface, Metal Gear Solid 5. The Metal Gear series has always been known for its excellent villains and the way it pits players against those villains in thrilling, memorable boss encounters. Skullface was well positioned to join that long list of bosses, only you never get to fight him. He dies like a chump and a bit too quickly, and never getting to go up against him 1v1 is one of the Phantom Pain's numerous issues. Metal Gear TX55, Metal Gear. The very first Metal Gear was all about the titular mechanical monstrosity that was proving to be a massive threat. Technically, you do get to square off against it, but it isn't really much of a boss fight. Its laser attacks are easy to dodge, and all you have to do is plant C4 bricks on its legs to blow it to hell. It's disappointingly easy and over too quickly, to the point where it doesn't even feel like an actual boss fight. Commandant STEELE, Borderlands. For much of Borderlands' runtime, Commandant STEELE is positioned as a formidable foe, and her efforts to get into the vault are what you spend the bulk of the game fighting against. When the time finally comes to square off against her, well, you don't. Instead, the hulking monstrosity known as the Destroyer comes along and unceremoniously kills STEELE and her militia. The final fight against the Destroyer is still a decent one, sure, but not getting the chance to fight against STEELE still stings a bit. Nakayama, Borderlands 2 Sir Hammerlock's Big Game Hunt DLC. Borderlands 2's Sir Hammerlock's Big Game Hunt expansion isn't exactly the best Borderlands content Gearbox has ever delivered. You spend the expansion looking for rare Pandora animals, with former Hyperion scientist Professor Nakayama being positioned as the ultimate villain. But when you finally meet him and it's time to fight him, Nakayama slips on a set of stairs. With each impact with the ground, his health bar takes a hit, and by the time he gets to the bottom, he's dead. Sure, it's a funny moment, but why? Deathstroke, Batman Arkham Knight. Deathstroke, the Master Assassin, has always been one of Batman's most formidable foes, which is a tag he lived up to with his excellent boss fight in Arkham Origins. So of course, in all of their wisdom, for Arkham Knight, Rocksteady put him in a tank, put you in a tank, and put the two of you in a tank battle. A tank battle against Deathstroke. No one asked for this. Let's Shake, No More Heroes. UAA member Let's Shake might not have been the most high-profile No More Heroes villain, but the moment you set eyes on him, you still want to fight him. The build-up leading to what should have been the boss fight sets the stage very well, but, well, that cutscene doesn't lead into a boss fight. Instead, some guy runs up and just kills Let's Shake in that cutscene himself. To call it disappointing would be an understatement. President Shinra, Final Fantasy VII. President Shinra is featured as a pretty important character in the Final Fantasy VII series, and though he is far from one of the most important foes you come across in Final Fantasy VII itself, he is still important enough to warrant a boss fight. In the game, you and your party even run into him, but sadly enough, never get to fight him. That's because when you do find him, he's already been killed, so job done, I guess? General Scales, Star Fox Adventures. Star Fox Adventures, a weird, unexpected Star Fox offshoot, which might have its issues, but also has plenty of redeeming qualities. The one part of the game that cannot be defended, though, is the so-called boss fight against General Scales. Built up as the primary villain for much of the game, when you actually get to him, he just tamely stands around for a while before being ordered by the even bigger bad to just surrender. Truly a boss fight for the ages. Dr. Loboto, Psychonauts. Dr. Loboto, and even the weirdness of a lack of a boss fight with him, is in many ways emblematic of just how weird Psychonauts is as a whole, so in a way it's oddly fitting. But still, Loboto is the main villain for much of the game, but watching him get knocked off of a cliff and fall to his death before you can even fight him is still disappointing. SAREK, TRINE. You spend the entirety of TRINE trying to get to Sarek's tower and beat the wizard in combat. The final level itself is constantly building up to a fight, with Sarek being a constant presence in the background. After much trials and tribulations, when you do get to Sarek, it all ends with a sudden smash of the hammer before you even get a chance to fight him. It's a bit too abrupt, to say the least. Omega Red, X2 Wolverine's Revenge. Really, never getting to fight Omega Red in a proper boss battle is far from the only issues with X2 Wolverine's Revenge, but it's still a pretty noticeable issue. He's a pretty cool villain that you would expect to face off with eventually, but you never really get to fight him, much less beat him. There's even a scene at the end where Wolverine suddenly realizes that he never actually fought him, which is just weird. Aerials, Guilty Gear Xrd Revelators. Revelator was a solid update to an already excellent game of Guilty Gear Xrd, but most people would agree that not having Aerials feature as a playable final boss was a pretty big missed opportunity. Her being one of the primary villains of the Guilty Gear universe, and her entire look and personality essentially screaming big bad, just compounds the disappointment of said lack of boss fight. MECHA, Alice Madness Returns. This weird, unexpectedly dark psychological horror take on the timeless Wonderland story has a lot going for it. This is not one of those things. At one point in the game, Alice comes across a huge, imposing mecha being piloted by March Hare and the Dormouse, only for the Hatter to abruptly come along and just wipe the floor with the huge, imposing mecha. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.